Hey, today we have some big news about Sony and Arrowhead. They've got plans to meet up and discuss what's next. We've also got information about a hotfix that might be arriving soon to resolve the nerfs to the flamethrower and the charger's hitbox. Not only that, but there's more to discuss. If you'd like to support the channel, feel free to tap the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We've got some major news about the locked regions due to Sony's PSN linking system, which resulted in 177 regions being blocked from accessing Helldivers 2. Now, if you installed the game prior to this issue, you should be able to play still. For example, this moderator on Reddit mentioned people who continued to own the game and did not get a refund in regions where it was delisted can still play the game. Nevertheless, Arrowhead has scheduled a meeting with Sony for today to talk about the future plans. This was confirmed when a Helldivers 2 Discord member inquired if there were still ongoing discussions with Sony. Arrowhead CEO Shams responded that Sony's representatives would be visiting tomorrow, aka today, to strategize and discuss future plans. Shams' response, which can be viewed here, stated, "Good, they're visiting tomorrow, full day of planning and discussions." Well, you can interpret this in any way you like. I mean, in the past it seemed like there was endless discussions about ongoing talks, but this time, things appear different, especially since Sony's representatives are visiting Arrowhead Game Studios to explore what's next for those regions still locked out. What do you think will happen? Will Sony finally unblock these regions, or will we continue to hear that there's still some sort of ongoing talk about it? Let me know your responses down below in the comments. What I believe with this news, we're getting closer to understanding what's happening with the blocked regions, which is quite huge. Will it impact the current player base in a positive direction? Certainly, I think that's possible. However, some fans that are unhappy with the recent changes have recently decided to stop playing and just moved on. Now, if Arrowhead can rectify this situation, they should be able to easily win back the player base, especially by reverting the flamethrower changes. This seems likely, as we've recently heard that the flamethrower might get a hotfix to roll back the changes made in the previous Escalation of Freedom patch. The community manager, Twinbeard, responded to a player inquiring why Arrowhead developers couldn't simply roll back the changes to the flamethrower and the other weapons as well. Twinbeard's response suggested that the hotfix might soon be released, to revert the changes to the flamethrower. The post can be seen here where he says, "In terms of fire issues, we're investigating possibly hotfixing it since it's so recent it might be able to resolve without interfering with other systems and changes, but we'll get on this." With this right here, I think we all see this as one small step forward that eventually will lead to bigger steps. I think it's for sure a small step because we're all still facing a lot of crashes, and even if the developers buff the weapons, some of you might not be too excited if these crashes continue. My biggest issue with the last dozen or so patches is that while there's been talks of, fixing crashes, the developers haven't managed to implement a solid solution. It feels like this bug is basically perpetually in the process of being fixed. I completely understand that bugs and issues can arise, but the fact remains that nearly every patch has mentioned resolving the crashes. This should definitely be at the top of their priority list, and hopefully it's something we'll see officially resolved soon and not just like 10 patches later. With that said about the flamethrowers, what about the charger's hitbox? Does Arrowhead have plans to revert the change as well and include it in a hotfix? That's possible because the community manager replied to a post on X where a player discussed the flamethrower and the chargers and wanted to know if there would be a hotfix for it. Twinbeard essentially said that some things are more easily hotfixed. Here's his exact reply. "Hi, some things are more easily hotfixed or reverted than others. We're looking into and discussing the recent charger and fire related issues and hope we can resolve some or all. We'll holler when we know more. Have a nice weekend." Well, there's a chance we might see a hotfix somewhat soon, and I think it's possible it could be released either this week or next week. Considering the 60-day plan was announced about 2 weeks ago and today is the 27th, that means it's been 14 days since they talked about the plan. They have about 46 days left to address the upcoming hotfixes and patches. The only thing that worries me is whether 60 days is sufficient for them to figure out what to do, or if it's too much pressure, given that they're setting a time limit for themselves, on what to be accomplished. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out, but you guys can feel free to let me know what you think. So, besides that information, Twinbeard explained that they cannot revert or roll back everything because it would completely obliterate the well-received changes they've made. For example, right here, Twinbeard wrote, "There are several reasons, but the biggest one for sure is that apart from overbalancing and other known issues in the game, we've improved hundreds of other things, which would be obliterated from doing a rollback to any given time. Let's hypothetically say there are 10 major things the players would like us to change or roll back, stats for primaries, spawns, and patrol stuff, etc. And that there's 50 more minor ones in terms of bugs and other issues. I can assure you there are hundreds of things we've made better during that time frame. This response explains why we can't just go back to the old version. It would undo all the good updates, like the crossbow can now take out fabricators and bug nests, and the spear no longer crashes the game or loses track of targets like it did previously. I really wouldn't want the developers to revert everything, because we would have to go back to experiencing those issues, and I know a lot of you would not want to go through that again. Next up, we have a developer's response regarding the Senator, Knight SMG, and the Verdict pistol. Some of us thought these were bugged because you cannot receive the maximum amount of ammo through a resupply. I wasn't aware that the supply pods do not fully resupply these specific weapons, which is odd because if you use any other SMG or pistol, it will refill your entire ammo capacity. Before we dive into the developer's response, let me demonstrate the problem. When I completely empty a magazine for both the Knight SMG and the Verdict pistol, picking up an ammo box only refills them to about half capacity. This issue also applies to the Senator as well. Now, if you use any other pistol or SMG, like the Pummeler in this instance, you'll notice immediately that I'm able to pick up the maximum amount of ammo, unlike the Verdict, Senator, and even the Knight SMG. Alright, with that said, does this really make sense? You'd think there's no way the developers meant for this to happen, right? But apparently that's exactly what they did. Over on the Helldivers 2 Reddit page, a player reached out to the support team members and they ask why the resupply doesn't fully refill the ammo for certain weapons. And here's what the support team member had to say in response. Hi there, Helldiver. It appears this is working as intended. The Knight receives 5 mags from a resupply pod and the Verdict gets 4. This right here wasn't the only response the player received. The player pointed out that it's strange how other SMGs can be fully resupplied, but some cannot. He also wanted to know if there was a specific reason as to why it's like this. The reply this member got was, currently this is intended behavior, though this is something that we may consider changing in a future patch. I don't know what changes the developers are currently planning for the future of weapons in Helldivers 2. So what I'd like to know now is, am I wrong to think this is actually a bug considering all the other weapon magazines can be fully resupplied? Or did the developers really think it was a good idea? Because to me it makes absolutely no sense. Anyway, whatever the case may be, they need to change this because it seems like a terrible decision. Again, I wasn't aware of this until I had tested out to see exactly what was going on with it. Now, whether or not this information is new to you, let me know what you think about this because I think it does need to be changed. I don't think they intended this. I think it's absolutely a bug, but hey, you guys can feel free to let me know what you think down below in the comments. Putting that aside, let's take a look at the news video that's been circulating ever since we completed the major order. I'll play it now and you'll hear from me again in about a minute or two.
Kelly. Today, the mysterious cloud of spores known as the Gloom finally showed signs of slowing its growth. The cloud, which began emanating from the core of the Terminid quarantine zone last week, has doubled in size almost every day and now encompasses nearly a dozen solar systems. All attempts to peer into the Gloom so far have failed, and military probes sent inside have all quickly ceased broadcasting. Experts speculate that the Gloom could be some kind of mutation incubator, supercharging the already extremely high rate of Terminid evolution. Currently, efforts are underway to construct a sturdier probe by insulating it in several layers of aluminum foil. That's Liberty's latest. I'm Coretta Kelly.
Okay, for those who caught my video last week or 2 weeks ago, you might remember me talking about a certain leak. Guess what? That leak is now confirmed. It's official, as we've just witnessed. Now, I'm really curious about this spore cloud and what it might lead to. Here are my 3 main theories. I'm thinking the Gloom might be forming massive colonies underneath the cloud. Another possibility is that we're about to see new kinds of enemies, ones that have either changed or have evolved because of the Gloom. And last but not least, there's also this idea I've floated before. What if this cloud is on a collision course with what used to be Meridia, which is now a black hole? But hey, who knows what exactly is going on, but those are my ideas so far. Also, with the Gloom in mind, we do have a success message from the last major order, and I do want to go over it because there is something interesting right here. The growth of the Gloom seems to have slowed. Clearly, the Helldivers show of freedom was highly effective, intimidating the mindless insects and seizing the spread of their malevolent impenetrable cloud. The reason I bring this up is because clearly the growth hasn't slowed down too much, and I think they've mentioned this prior, so obviously anybody from Super Earth is lying to all of us, and this clearly is, yeah guys, it's growing. It's still growing. I don't know what they're saying here, but this is clearly a lie, so do not believe it. I have a feeling this right here is going to end badly. Moving onwards, the CEO Shams responded to a player and said that they have a multitude of designs and various plans. They also had a meeting where new ideas were pitched. The message can be seen here where he says, "We have tons of different plans, all the high level ones I get to look at. There are tons and tons of design docs and briefs on the weapons, items, enemies, etc. Of course, but I rarely have time to nerd out on them. I try to focus on the plans where I'm needed the most and leave the details to the experts. Today, I sat in on a meeting where people pitched new ideas for all kinds of stuff. I feel that this information here is great, but at the same time, I'm sure many of you are just frustrated with the developers constantly talking about their plans without addressing the nerfing, the persisting crashing issues, and more. Sure, they have the 60-day plan, but we haven't seen much, really. We'll see how things progress. Hopefully they can get their act together and resolve a significant number of known issues while delivering some solid content. The current problem is not just the lack of content, but also the ongoing battle with bugs. If Arrowhead can reduce the bugs and introduce new content, I believe the player base will return. But you guys can let me know how you feel about that. Speaking of issues, in a previous video, we've discussed how the CCO, Mr. Pillestead, mentioned that morale was quite low in the studio. Additionally, CEO Shams responded to a player who questioned how morale could be low when everyone was given 6 weeks of vacation. He provided his perspective on the studio situation, essentially indicating that things aren't going as well as one might expect. So Shams wrote back and said, "Rested and morale ain't the same. We're, as you know, not exactly hitting out of the park since the last update, but we're hard at work to turn things around." And it seems that Shams also believes that morale is low. My question is, how will this impact the upcoming patch now that the devs are somewhat upset, right? Previous patches weren't exactly stellar, and with low morale, I doubt it will improve, the quality of the next few updates. Consider this, if you're a developer who thinks the game is heading in a terrible direction, and the studio is having you recode or, fix additional bugs, that's incredibly stressful. It's likely this stress could lead to more mistakes, whether it's due to a lack of attention to detail or reduced creativity and thoroughness in future work or patches. So here's my 2 cents. I think there is a big issue with low morale because it can eventually lead to burnout. And if it does, the developers are just going to continue doing a terrible job, right? Because they have low morale, they think the game is going down, under, it's heading in a bad direction. And I don't think the future patches are going to be any better, but hey, I could be wrong, but I do want to let you guys know this right away, that I do not want the developers to fail. I feel like that's just a big thing going around where you just want these developers, these studios to just fail, terribly. That's not what I want. What I would like to see is the game to succeed and, thrive and be able to do better. But as you guys can tell, low morale can lead to burnout, and all these other issues are just, it's all bad. And like I said, it's going in a terrible direction. I would like to know your thoughts on everything we've talked about in today's video. Let me know everything down below in the comments. With everything said, this is your Helldivers 2 news. We're now going to check out the top 3 comments from the previous video. If you guys would like to be featured in the next video, all you have to do is comment down below. The first comment is by P. Johns 9532. The replies from the staff at Arrowhead are starting to feel less and less genuine. They keep saying, "We are looking into this, we are trying to improve that, and we need to do better in QA." Been hearing this for months now with little nothing to show for it. And you're not wrong there, man. I absolutely agree. I think it's absolutely terrible, and who knows where things are going to go from here. The second comment is by H Maverick, software engineer here. Devs leaving is a normal way of life. Pretty sure he's talking about people that wrote 3 or more years ago are no longer there. They moved on to greener pastures during the development cycle. So if you have to suddenly dig into an old code like that, it's uncovering an archive. And sometimes that code you are reading makes no sense, and it would be great to discuss the devs that wrote it, but you can't. With that message said, thank you so much for H Maverick for letting me know about that. But yeah, that does make sense. If you guys do not know what he's talking about, check out the previous video. And last but not least, we have John Bradland 9556. Imagine that, a liquid burning fuel reaching hard to reach parts of an automaton, frying and overheating vulnerable parts. Almost realistic. And there you go. Those are the top 3 comments. Hope you guys have a great day. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and comment down below and tell me what you think. See you guys in the next one.